have your attention, please? Thank you very much for coming. We've set a new world record for attendance. And wasn't that a wonderful day? Just extraordinary. In fact, when I got up this morning, I walked in for breakfast, and to step into a room full of classmates was the most warm, proud, and loving feeling you can imagine. We get together only every 5 years, and some people can't make it that often, so it always becomes a very special occasion. Thanks so much for coming. It's your presence, really, that makes this something special. What we're doing right now is preparing for the arrival of our former commandant, General de Chastelain, and his wife. They're going to be stepping up, and Larry's going to introduce the general. The general is going to reply with a few comments. And then Cheryl Cooper is going to take the mic, and she's going to express her point of view as a Queen student in our fourth year, and her impressions of the college, and all of the events that she took place in. I had a whole bunch of other stuff that I wanted to do, but I think the battle plan never survives first contact with the enemy. So we're going to put some other things aside and really just concentrate and prepare ourselves for the arrival of the general. So when he does arrive, I'd ask you all to stand. They will take their seats at the back at the head table, and Larry will step up to the mic to pay his tribute. Any questions?
All right. Please sit. Because I've got a 3-hour speech, and I know you don't want to stand through it all. For those of you that had memory lapse that were classmates, I'm Larry Stevenson. And for spouses, I've met a lot of you tonight. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming. It's my distinct pleasure and honor to introduce someone who I know my classmates need no introduction to. We have two very, very special guests. And if we go back one slide, if we could. First guest is Marianne. A lot of you got to see Marianne de Chastelain through our year here. I got a chance to see her many, many times. And my memory of Marianne was always tremendous support. I had to give a number of speeches in that fourth year to various ex-cadet clubs and old brigades. People that actually looked a little bit like us, old. And always before and always after, Marianne would always come up and tell me what a fantastic job I'd done, even if I hadn't. And I always so much appreciated that, and I know she meant a lot to everybody in this class. The other person that I do want to introduce, I know classmates don't need an introduction to, but it's the general himself. The general has had and continues to have a spectacular career. Before he ever got to this college, he was a battalion commander at the age of 32. Came here, as all of you know who are classmates, at the age of 39 as a young general and commandant. For most of us had not seen young commandants. It was spectacular. And after he left here, by the way, went on to great leadership positions, Chief of Defense Staff. I got to see him many times because he was in my regiment, the Princess Patricia's, and so in my 4 years of service, I got to see the tremendous leadership and how everybody in my regiment, officers, men, literally adored John DeChastelain. It was terrific to be able to say I wore the same cap badge as the general. Went on to be, of course, Chief of Defense Staff, not once, not good enough. Called back for extra duty twice as the Chief of Defense Staff. But not only a great soldier, but a great statesman. Went on to be Canada's ambassador to the US. And as somebody said to me in the chow line a little bit earlier, amazing thing, if that wasn't enough, he then went and brought peace to Northern Ireland, which is pretty amazing. I have been lucky for the last 7 years. I teach a leadership course at the Ivey Business School. And this is actually the first slide I show in that course. It's actually the first, I don't have a better version of it, but this is the slide that I show. If you don't recognize from far away, the person up that plank that we were coming down, which was a muddy slide, is the general himself. The other younger guy, a little bit fitter and slimmer, was me. And I want to tell you two parts of this story and why I use it in this leadership program. The first part was, and for those of you that got to get to know the general in your time here, it was amazing because he called me about 3 days before we were going to run the obstacle course, and this was a typical General DeChastelain move. Most commandants would call and say, I'm running the obstacle course. That's not how he worked. He called me and said, is it okay if I run the obstacle course? I was going like, do you have checked my rank? I think I'm an officer cadet. I think you're a general. You can do whatever you'd like. But that was absolutely his style at every stage of the game, which was made you feel important no matter where you were on that rung. And that was very special for me as a very young, aspiring officer at that time of the game. The other reason I use this, and I use it I have my 12 leadership lessons, and the first one, and I have it above this when I give it as a lecture at Ivey, is lead by example. And that is what I learned from General DeChastelain. I know each and every one here did, which is, this is a commandant who said, I'm going to run the obstacle course, and James, of course, recounted it for those of you that read it in Veritas. It's a true story, the general knows, which is, I can't remember, but probably on the 4th or 5th obstacle, it was a wall that we had to jump off, and he landed and literally badly hurt his ankle. And I remember turning to him and saying, as he was hobbling for the next to the next obstacle, General, do you want to continue? And without missing the beat, went, I would not finish this obstacle course under any circumstance. And it is absolutely true. He was on crutches, for those of you who remember, for a couple of weeks after that. But I learned something that I don't think we generally learn in business, and hopefully all of you got when you were in the military, which is you do lead from the front, you do lead by example, and he was a classic example of that. As a man who led from the front all the time. And there was nothing that would stop the mission. And we got to learn that, and I hope that everybody in this room, whether you stayed in the military or like me, left and went into a civilian career, I think you will all accept that you probably went one grade further if you're in the military, and in my case, a couple of rungs of the corporate ladder higher as a direct result of having such a fine, unbelievable leader early in our careers. And so please join me in welcoming the General to say a few words.
I look at that photo and it seems like yesterday, except I'm not limping. I would tell you two things. First, what a great pleasure it is for Marianne and me to be here. Second, that the reason I'm late is I was waiting at the Marriott over there, looking at a very noisy class, I think of 83, that are having their event and saying, when's Larry going to come and get us? And then I went over to the guy behind the counter and said, you got the class of 78 here tonight. And he said, no, tonight it's class of 83, and tomorrow I think it's a class of something else. And I said, well, I've got a thing saying that they're here at the Marriott residence. He said, no, that's, anyway. So you can see I'm still getting things not quite right. It is a huge pleasure. You, as Larry has said, was the first class that I had as the leadership class when I came back to RNC in 1977. I would tell you that I was as nervous meeting you guys is you probably weren't nervous at all about meeting the Commandant, but I could recall that 17 years before when I graduated, I knew how things were done. I was the Deputy Cadet Wing Commander, and we didn't have an honor year then. And I thought we ran it pretty well. But I was also aware that things change, and I wanted to find out to what degree they had changed and whether leadership had changed in any way, shape, or form. We now had a rotating Cadet Wing Commander and honor slate and so forth. So I was learning as much as from you as you were learning from me, if indeed you were learning anything from me. And I found it a very interesting experience. I had a Commandant in my second year at RMC, who was the first naval commandant of the college, and who came back remembering how it had been when they used to carry swagger sticks. And suddenly we all found ourselves carrying swagger sticks because he had liked it. And I would tell you, carrying swagger sticks is not an easy thing. We would walk downtown carrying a swagger stick, which you would carry in your right hand as you went along. And if you saw somebody you had to salute, you had to come down, up, down, salute. And after you saluted about the 5th prison guard that had been walking, you realized this was not a great way to change the way things done at the military college. So I didn't want to change anything, but I wanted to learn from you, and I did. And as you know, I had 2 more classes after you, each of which were challenging, but none quite like yours because, as I say, you were the first class for my period as Commandant. And of course, my last class in 1980 was the last all-male class, and I had a role in selecting the first group of women cadets, after which I went to Germany, where I met up with a lot of you who had already gone there, and a number of the others from the 2 classes after you. RMC is a very interesting place. It is an elemental part of our lives. That is why so many of you from this class are here. Sadly, some of you aren't, because either through military experience or other reasons, they're no longer alive. And in my class, of course, we'll have our 60th year of graduation 2 years from now, that of course is much more the case. But whether you stayed in the forces or not, this class has produced extraordinary leaders in this country, both civilian and military, and you have much to be proud of that. It will always be a part of your existence. When I first came to Canada in 1955 and then to RNC in 1956, it was with absolutely no intention of following a military career. I'd been educated in Britain. We had 2 years national service to do when I graduated in 55. I had a place to go to Oxford after my 2 years in the Army. Most of my chums from school who joined the Army went straight to Kenya to fight the Mau Mau, or to Cyprus to fight Iuka, or to Malaya to fight the communists, while the Shasley skived off to Canada to join his family, who had been moved there for business reasons. I had a place at Oxford, but my father wrote to me and said, there's this place called RMC that will pay you to get your degree. And you can do some military service. And I figured that what he wasn't telling me was that he'd paid for my private schooling for 12 years and now it was up to me. So I applied to come here. It was turned down. I'd been accepted by Oxford. I'd been accepted by Yale in second year and UBC in second year to read history. But RMC said you don't have the physics, chemistry, and math unless you're hiding something, which I wasn't. So I went to a place called Mount Royal College in Calgary and asked if I could get physics, chemistry, and math in grades 10, 11, and 12 in 8 months. And they said, sure. I think if I'd said, could I get a postgraduate degree in astrophysics in 6 months, they would have said, sure. I think they needed the money. But now Mount Royal University is a very established and successful university in Calgary, and I'm one of their distinguished alumni. And I had a 2-year fight with this math and physics department at RNC until I could get into history. Why did I stay in the Army? Because what I learned at RNC and the companionship I found here, and when I eventually joined my regiment, I found I liked being among soldiers, and I liked soldiering. And by soldiering, I mean the same thing whether you're in the Air Force or whether you're in the Navy or whether you're in the Army. It is serving your country in a group of people who are like-minded, who have the same concerns for nationality and the same wish to give something back to your country. And you're a part of that. And your time at RNC will always make you a part of that. The first time I put on uniform, it was at the age of 5 in New York. My mother had taken my sister and me across the Atlantic in 1940 to New York to live with her parents while my father was working in North Africa with Special Operations Executive. And she went to work for Sir William Stevenson. And my grandfather gave me a General MacArthur suit, which I wore proudly, feeling that I was a general, like the very famous general in the Philippines. I got to know a number of superintendents at West Point. One during your final year, General Goodpaster, who had been on the staff of Eisenhower during the Second War, and who had been Supreme Allied Commander in Europe when I was a captain commanding a mechanized company with the Patricias in northern Germany. And he stayed with us at the Commandant's house during the RNC West Point weekend. And I, talking to him, was calling him sir, and he said, "You got to stop calling me sir, my name is whatever." And I said, "Sir, when I was captain, you were Supreme Allied Commander Europe, 4-star. I can't do that." And he said, "Well, in that case, General, I got to call you sir too." Which he did for the rest of our time together. A real gentleman of the old school. Much like, I gather, MacArthur was when he was superintendent at West Point. MacArthur was a 4-year cadet at West Point in the Corps of Cadets. He was a 3-year superintendent. You know his history, of course. Medal of Honor winner in the Philippines. Tremendous success in the Second World War in the Pacific. Really the savior of Japan at the end of the war when he provided aid to them instead of playing the role of conqueror. And of course his time in Korea, from which he was fired for threatening to use nuclear weapons on the Chinese. He too recognized that the central focus of his life had been his time in what he called the Corps, which was for him the Corps of Cadets. And that he was defined by the motto of West Point, which was duty, honor, country. Sounds familiar, like truth, duty, and valor. And in his final statement, when he was awarded the special award from the first celebrated superintendent of West Point, he addressed the Corps of Cadets. It was in May of 1962, less than 2 years before his ultimate death. And he talked about the values that he had learned at West Point and that had guided him in everything he had done since that time. Of course, in the military all the time, but nonetheless, every step he took, he felt, was based on what he had lived it. And he said, as he finished his address, "This is the final roll call I will have with you. And when the time comes for me to cross the river, the last thing on my mind will be the Corps and the Corps and the Corps." Well, we're not General MacArthur and we're not West Point graduates, we're RMC graduates. Truth, Duty, Valor was what guided you for your class for your 4 years here or CMR and Royal Roads. And they have had an effect on everything you've done since, whether you realize it or not. And I think you do realize it, because that's why you're here 40 years after you graduate. And why you will be here, like me, in 2 years, 60 years after you graduate. After that, the bets are off, because things happen when you get old. But anyway, thank you again. It's a great pleasure to be considered a part of this class. We were together for a while. Maybe we'll be together at other reunions. But thank you again. It's a great pleasure.
Thank you very much, General de Chastelain. I feel quite certain that your visit with us tonight is unprecedented, that a class celebrating its 40-year reunion should have a former commandant present on the evening. Thank you very much for taking the time and effort to be with us tonight. It's my great pleasure now to invite our own Cheryl Cooper to say a few words. Cheryl.
Good evening, everyone. Since the age of 12, I have kept a journal. I presently have over 5,000 pages in 45 notebooks that for posterity I keep in fireproof safes in my home office. To prepare for tonight, I read through the pages that covered, in great detail I might add, my first year at Queen's University. To the detriment of my studies, I often elected to write in my journal rather than tackle my required reading of Austen, Eliot, Bronte, and Dickens. But I couldn't help it. The events of my life were far too exciting not to record them. So I want you to know that what I am about to tell you comes not necessarily from my 60-year-old brain, but from the jottings and observations of an 18-year-old who up until that time had never been away from home. I came to Kingston in the fall of '77 when all of you gentlemen were already well into your final year. Saturday Night Fever was playing at all the theaters. And the disco craze dominated the day. Stephen Bishop's On and On, Bob Welch's Sentimental Lady, and Player's Baby Come Back were the big tunes on the radio, and the ones that I had constantly repeating on my little record player. And Kingston itself was a gentler version of what it is today. The Superior Restaurant, the Hungry Lion, King's Disco, Tom's Place, Muldoon's. The Anchor Room atop the Holiday Inn. They were all the hot spots. Places that in some cases have long since disappeared and slipped away into the mists of time. There were no condo developments on the waterfront, no wind turbines on Wolf Island, and more significantly, no women at the Royal Military College. I landed in at Queen's, never having previously seen the campus. Therefore, I had no idea that across the Kingston Bridge, there was a college full of studious officer cadets. My curiosity was piqued from the moment I began spotting short-haired men in blue capes and jaunty pillbox hats strolling along Princess Street in 2s and 3s. My first adventure across that bridge happened on Thursday, September 22nd, to be exact. After a mind-blowing frosh week, I had begun my classes and had come down with a terrible cold. If it hadn't been for the fact that my best friend had met a third-year cadet at a party the night before, I would never have ventured out that night. But intrigued by her glowing reports of the college and the male residents there, I was determined to go to the last party of the week, which just happened to be the fourth years. I was driven to the officer cadet's mess by a dark-haired fellow named Rick Fernie, who mysteriously did not say a word throughout the entire trek across town, leading me to wonder what I was in for. I discovered the mess was packed with women, floor to ceiling, fore and aft. They occupied the couches, lounged across the tables, and had jammed the dance floor. Occasionally, in amongst this noisy throng, I caught a glimpse of a mustache and realized there actually were men at this party. It was evident to me why, on the Queen's campus, this event was fondly referred to as the cattle drive, or the meet and greet, with the word meat being spelled M-E-A-T. Steve Sakaluk and Eric Burnett were the first cadets on the scene. They said hello, got me a Coke, and promptly abandoned me. Most likely to scope out more promising prospects. I ended up plunking myself down on the arm of a couch in the company of the enigmatic Rick Fernie and another cadet named Hans Peters, who very kindly did not flee from my coughs and sniffles. As I didn't know what questions to ask, having no knowledge whatsoever of the Canadian military, our conversations were short-lived. By this time, my cold was making me miserable, and I just wanted to go back to residence. But then, I saw him. Standing alone in the doorway, in a snazzy three-piece suit, black platform shoes on his feet, shoulders back, chin lifted, eyes keenly surveying the women in the room. Rather liking the look of him, I remember thinking, hope he comes over this way. And he did, thanks to Rick and Hans, who eagerly called out, "Coop!" perhaps hoping for a reprieve from the young Queen student with whom they had grown quite bored. Well, this Coop fellow sat down on the couch arm next to me and started firing questions at me. So, where are you from? What are you studying? How do you like Queen so far? Has everyone taken good care of you here? Do you want a Coke? Do you want some food? Do you want to dance? He stayed the remainder of the evening with me, although he did take one more foray back into the throng of women, in the hopes, he later confessed, of finding a blonde that looked like Catherine Deneuve. Thankfully, his search proved fruitless, and he came back my way. Later that night, I called my mother, and I told her that I was besotted with an RMC cadet. Sadly, it was some months before Coop felt the same way about me. You see, he had a number of other women all over Ontario, clamoring for his affections in his 4th year. So I had my work cut out for me, but I'll spare you the details. The important thing is, meeting Randy that evening changed my life. It was the start of a cherished relationship with RMC and all of you. It was the beginning of a momentous year, one of the very best in all of my years of living. From then on, I did my best to study, but there was always something interesting going on at the college. Jive lessons with Ross Cowie. Ballroom dancing lessons with an instructor who struggled to teach you how to move gracefully across the dance floor and who would frequently stop and scream in frustration, "No, no, gentlemen, come on, this is not a parade square." Fancy dinners, wine and cheese and champagne parties, hockey games, basketball games. Everything about the college fascinated me. And yes, admittedly, some things boggled and amused me, such as that little sideways maneuver you made on the parade square. The one that to this day I still refer to as the Lido Shuffle. Despite that, and the fact that you sometimes wore very funny looking pillbox hats, I had great respect for you. At Queen's, I only had to worry about my grades. I could roll out of bed at 8:15 to make an 8:30 class. You had uniforms, parades, drills to attend to, and it was mandatory that you participated in sports and social events. Now that I knew where all the extraordinary young men were, the Queen's boys paled in comparison. Funny thing was, many of the Queen's boys were hugely envious of you. They couldn't compete with your impressive uniforms, your established careers, and the fact that you attracted hordes of women because you owned cars. Their vitriol was at times quite shocking. In the Bannery cafeteria one day, I had a guy from my hometown lash out at me on the subject of RMC cadets, proclaiming that the only reason why I was dating one is because he had money. I had another who was so incensed for my preference for cadets, he went to the trouble of writing a treatise for me entitled, "Warning, those RMC boys are wild." The parades, dinners, dances were all wonderful fun, but there were 3 events that year that I will never forget. Number 1 was the spring variety show. John Stesick's performance as Mr. Watt was hilarious. As I had met the real Mr. Watt several times, usually on a Saturday night at the Tropicana on Princess Street, and I had always felt such a comfort in his purview that everything was splendid. And then there was Jim Doherty, who blew us all away with his irresistible JPD2, and who never once slipped out of character, even when the entire crowd was collapsing into the aisles in hysterics. Number 2 was the Mike Mandel Mental Magic Show. Mandel had hypnotized 16 of you, and you were doing all sorts of crazy things. He had you drinking vodka and rolling joints. He had Rob Gare putting his shoes on other people's feet. He told you that the audience's clothes were melting away. And while you sat there gaping at us, he quickly reversed and said, "Oh no, now yours are melting away." And you frantically raced to hide your nakedness. He had Dennis Weiss freaking out because there was a pack of green guys running around trying to unzip the men's zippers. And finally, and most astoundingly, he commanded Bruce Rogers to conduct an interview with the Moon Lady. The only catch was Bruce had to speak her mother tongue. But it didn't seem to matter that the moon language was not in Bruce's unhypnotized repertoire. His interview was flawless. Absolute perfection. Number 3 was the West Point Ball. As Randy was still dealing with his other women issue, it was the only ball I attended that year. But the highlight for me was the receiving line. There I was, outfitted in a lime green polyester gown, trying so hard to look dignified in my white, ill-fitting gloves, knowing my hair had fallen flat thanks to the winter winds, having achieved nothing of significance in my life. And I was about to meet the handsome man that I had seen around on the RMC campus, the one who often dressed in wellies and a tweed flat cap and smoked a pipe, the Commandant. The time had come. I was going to meet General John de Chastelain and his wife Marianne, who was a famous Queen's graduate. I was shaking in that receiving line. I felt like I was about to meet the King and Queen. But you were both so lovely, and you said just the right words to put at ease those of us who had very little confidence in your magnificent presence. You were the most impressive couple I had ever met. And today for me, and I presume for all of us here, you too still reign as number 1. As the months went by, aside from my dear Randy Cooper, several of you became true standouts. Dave Button was the most gentlemanly. Glenn Clark had the nicest smile. Al Merrick had the best moves. On the disco and dance floors. Jeff McBean had the best sense of humor. Although being young and innocent, his particular brand of humor often made me blush or went over my head. Nigel Ellis was the most legendary. I kept hearing of this man's exquisite brain and how on several exams he'd pull off a 90 when his disgruntled classmates had to fight for a 50. Dan Cameron? Well, Dan Cameron was just a character. And the best looking cadet? Because he looked a lot like Donny Osmond, I bestowed those honors on Tom Lawson. Oh, but wait, he's not in your class, was he? It was the newlyweds, Kathy and Frank Wagner, and Derek and Theo Bouchard, that I held in such high regard. Realizing I was homesick, they welcomed me into their happy homes. Knowing something of the unsavory meals I was being served in the Bannery cafeteria, they fed me on numerous occasions. They guided me throughout my critical first year, gave me a safe haven from the stresses of academia, and became my lifelong friends. I have always been very proud to have received my degree from Queen's, but even more so, I am proud of my connection with RMC. My copy of the 1978 review is more precious to me than all 4 of my Queen's yearbooks put together. Since my own graduation, I have never gone to a Queen's reunion, but I have attended all but one of yours. I can laugh at the old pranks and stories because I was acquainted with the cast of characters, because I had witnessed your adventures firsthand. You are all successful, the inspirational cream of your generation. You kindled my interest in military history, taught me to push myself beyond my own comfort zone, and revealed to me life's possibilities if I were willing to seize life and not just drift through it. When you were gone, when you had all moved beyond RMC, the remainder of my years at Queen's were not quite as colorful. In my spare time, I volunteered at the Kingston General just so I could go up to the 9th floor and gaze out over Fort Henry and RMC. I smiled knowingly when I spotted young men in blue capes and pillbox hats, strolling about in 2s and 3s. And whenever I found myself on Princess Street, as I turned toward the college, I would get a lump in my throat. Cadets were still there, studying, pressing their uniforms, shouting on the parade square. But you weren't. By that time, you had all been scattered across Canada, starting out on your life journeys. Fortunately, ultimately, I was one of the lucky ones to take the journey with you. Thank you.
Cheryl, thank you very much. That was delightful and it was heartfelt and paid a great compliment to the people in this room. I would like to invite everybody to mingle with the General and Mrs. de Chastelaine for 15 to 20 minutes, and we'll call you back then. Thank you.
We have a song that we want to perform before our piper leaves. We're all here together on our 40th anniversary because 1978 was a momentous year when we all graduated from RMC. But 1977 was pretty momentous too, because we all returned to RMC as fourth years. And I got to tell you, for the first 4 years that I was in the military college system, I never thought that I was going to make it to that point. So showing up as a fourth year was a pretty proud moment for me. 1977 was the year we got our brand new commandant, and a new commandant with a vision to take RMC out of the mire of tradition and take it into the future of molding leaders for this country. And I think I can say for myself and most of us that he had a very positive impact on us, every last one of us, even if we didn't have any real personal contact with him. And in 1977, Paul McCartney released a song called Mull of Kintyre, which uses the pipes. And although Mull of Kintyre is a place in Scotland that he was singing about, metaphorically, the military colleges and RMC is our Mull of Kintyre. So we'd like to perform that for you tonight before our good piper takes the General and his good wife out. Okay, here we go. Oh, mist rolling in from the sea, my desire is always to be here, oh, Mull of Kintyre. Far have I traveled, and much have I seen, dark distant mountains with valleys of green, past painted deserts, the sun sets on fire as he carries me home to the Mull of Kintyre. Mull of Kintyre, oh, mist rolling in from the sea, my desire is always to be here, oh, Mull of Kintyre. Sweep through the meadows like deer in the glen, carry me back to the days I knew then, nights when we sang like a heavenly choir of the life and the times of the Mull of Kintyre. Mull of Kintyre, oh, mist rolling in from the sea, my desire is always to be here, oh, Mull of Kintyre. Smiles in the sunshine and tears in the rain still take me back where my memories remain. Flickering embers grow higher and higher as they carry me back to the Mull of Kintyre. Mull of Kintyre, oh, mist rolling in from the sea, my desire is always to be here, oh, Mull of Kintyre.
Ladies and gentlemen, don't lose heart, we're only an hour behind schedule. So listen, stick around though, the band is going to play 10 songs, and right afterwards we're going to thank Dale for the cruise, which he deserves. And then you're going to see Chief College Sergeant Major Cox, and we're going to finish off with the College Days video. And that in terms of filling the gap between sets, and then we're going to play the second set by ear, okay? So stick around though, there's lots to be seen. The band is now going to play their set. Thank you very much.
All right, welcome to the first set, maybe the only set. We'll see how it all goes. We are True Blue. We're a bunch of ex-Air Force guys who get together and practice time and time again once every 5 years. So you'll forgive us if there's a few false starts. We're going to start off with some oldies, some 1960s music that really formed our definition of rock and roll as we were growing up, watching the Ed Sullivan Show, seeing Roy Orbison, the Rolling Stones, the Beatles, Steppenwolf. Anyway, we're just going to launch into her. if you feel your feet starting to move, don't sit on your asses. Get out on the dance floor, okay? All right. Pretty Woman. Pretty woman, walking down the street. Pretty woman, the kind I like to meet. Pretty woman, I don't believe you, I know the truth. No one can look as good as you. Mercy. Pretty woman, won't you pardon me? Pretty woman, I couldn't help but see. Pretty woman, that you look lovely as can be. Are you lonely just like me? Oh. Pretty woman, stop a while. Pretty woman, talk a while. Pretty woman, give your smile to me. Pretty woman, yeah, yeah, yeah. Pretty woman, look my way. Pretty woman, say you'll stay with me. 'Cause I need you, I'll treat you right. Come with me, baby, be mine tonight. Pretty woman, don't walk on by. Pretty woman, don't make me cry. Pretty woman, don't walk away. Okay, if that's the way it must be, it's okay. I guess I'll go on home, it's late. There'll be tomorrow night, but wait, what do I see? Is she walking back to me? Yeah, she's walking back to me. Oh, pretty woman. Thanks guys. satisfaction. I can't get no girl reaction. 'Cause I've tried, and I've tried, and I've tried, and I've tried. I can't get no. I can't get no. When I'm riding around the world, and I'm doing this, and I'm signing that, and I'm trying to meet some girl, you tell me, baby, better come back maybe next week, 'cause you see I'm on a losing streak. I can't get no. No, no, no. Hey, hey, hey. That's what I say. I can't get no. I can't get no. I can't get no satisfaction. No satisfaction. No satisfaction. No satisfaction. Ooh, I need your love, babe. Yes, you know it's true. Hope you need my love, babe, just like I need you. Hold me, love me, hold me, love me. I ain't got nothing but love, babe. 8 days a week. Love you every day, girl. Always on my mind. One thing I can say, girl. Love you all the time. Hold me, love me, hold me, love me. I ain't got none but love, babe. 8 days a week. 8 days a week. I love you. 8 days a week is not enough to show I care. Ooh, I need your love, babe. Guess you know it's true. Hope you need my love, babe, just like I need you. Hold me, love me, hold me, love me. I ain't got nothing but love, babe. 8 days a week. 8 days a week. I love you. 8 days a week is not enough to show I care. Love you every day, girl. Always on my mind. One thing I can say, girl. Love you all the time. Oh, hold me, love me, hold me, love me. I ain't got nothing but love, girl. 8 days a week. 8 days a week. I love you. 8 days a week is not enough to show I care. Love you every day, girl. Always on my mind. One thing I can say, girl. Love you all the time. Hold me, love me, hold me, love me. a lucky crowd. You got 5 verses for the price of 4. Here to stay with me, guys. No, Born to Be Wild first. Born to Be Wild, this would be wild. Yep.
Yes.
Okay, well, RB's getting his second guitar ready. We're going to do a little heavy metal from the original heavy metal band, Steppenwolf. I think the first song I ever heard, heavy metal. The words, heavy metal, in the song.
With the wind and the feeling that I'm under. Yeah, darling, go make it happen. Take the world in a love embrace. Fire all of your guns at once and explode into space. Like a true nature's child, we were born to be wild. We can climb so high, I never wanna die. Born to be wild. Born to be wild. Explode into space like a true nature's child. We were born to be wild. We can climb so high, I never wanna die. Born to be wild. Born to be wild. face at first just was me. Turned a wider shade of pale.
We just want to say thank you. Dale's won the Lieutenant Governor's Award fairly recently. Lieutenant Governor's Award for Excellence in Nova Scotia. So again. Professional engineering. And so, I mean, Dale's just a really pretty special guy, and so we just, okay.
Didn't General de Chastelain just remind us of our motto, truth, duty, valor? Now, I'm not sure of the full truth in that wonderful homage that you gave to Dale. Yeah, well, nice try, but. Okay, look. As we all know, Dale hasn't been too long out of the trees. And now that we're through the projects that we've been working on, we've really gotten good with Photoshop. And Igor, you'll see, is a genius in that way. Has everybody seen the YouTube video where they take a pepperoni pizza and turn it into a beautiful woman? Well, imagine the work that we had to do to get the real Dale looking like this. So isn't that a great job from Photoshop? Igor, you did a wonderful job. So, should Dave continue with the toast, or should I continue with the roast? Okay, keep up the roast. Guided tours. Footsteps of the legendary 1937, Dale Robertson. Because it was just a few years later that females actually joined the ranks of the gentlemen cadets of RMC. Ah, yes, the good old days when men were men and women were proud of it. The college was rich in history and abundant in symbols of masculinity. Tour, I'd like to say a word about the uniform that I'm wearing this nice robe. They had some very colorful expressions for him. One of them I can remember was, "You're heavy and slow as if you're a bloody Clydesdale with hooves this big." Another one I remember when Dale was slacking off, not paying attention, off in Never Neverland, in his happy place. He'd say, "You straighten up, Robertson, or I'll ram this paste stick up your ass and spread it a full 40 inches. You need to know as well that while RMC was a little shit on the end of this stick, Dale fires back, "Not this end, sir!" With the hole in the background and Nelson's sword at his peak. I have to tell you a little story about a particular commandant's break. Dale, get the fuck out of bed and see this the parade. Dale bolts up like a coiled spring and says to me, "Oh my God, I gotta press my pants, I gotta polish my shoes, I gotta shit shower shave, I gotta clean my rifle." Then he lays back down and says, "Wake me up in 5 minutes." Ah, yes, the parade square, ladies and gentlemen. If the dining hall is the heart of RMC, then certainly the parade square. I also spent the last 2 years of the college in the Stone Frigate, and I can tell you that I have a theory that it was the rivalry between the Stone Frigate and the rest of the cadet wing that led to the swarming craze that we saw in the 1990s. This is how it goes. Every year at the first snowfall, they had this wonderful thing called the annual snowball flight that had the entire cadet wing versus Hudson Squadron, one squadron here in the Stone Frigate. So there was 500 madly wild, testosterone-crazed snowball fanatics out on the parade square here, having a battle that you just wouldn't believe. Dragging, kicking, and screaming across the parade square, and if they turn around, you'll see Fort LaSalle at the other side. And what they do is they put him down in the basement, rip up all his clothes, rub black shoe polish over everything where the sun doesn't shine, and then they'd send the cadet running across the parade square, running a gauntlet of snowballs to try to get back to his home base. In one particular year, almost every window was broken in the limestone frigate, and the hallways were flooded with water from fire hoses pouring in from both ends of it. And here's a study in contrast, ladies and gentlemen, that in this testosterone-crazed Hudson Squadron, there was the delicate Dale Robertson, who set up his beauty salon in the basement every Wednesday night, doing haircuts for his fellow cadets, $5 cash, under the table, of course. He's staring, ladies and gentlemen, at where Dale spent his 18th birthday. But they freeze over completely at that point in time, and what they do is bundle the cadet up, drag him kicking and screaming, walk him to the edge of the ice, and then 1, 2, 3, heave him in.
Happy birthday, Dale. Hope you have a good one.
Dale, you know what? This is Jim from the barbershop. And you know, he was stealing his business, for God's sake. For all that I've said about Dale in jest, he truly was an outstanding cadet. Here he is. His name's Bruce, a.k.a. the Fag Statue.
We all love you, not just me. That is a lot of completely undeserved attention. Obviously, thank you very much. You're an amazing man. 40 years? I don't know what I'm going to do when I grow up. I still haven't decided. As we get older, you know, our bodies start to fail. Different parts don't work. Watching Mike Belche dance raised emotions in me that I haven't experienced in a while. Our ears don't work so well. Half of us complain that we can't hear Jim talk. The other half of us complain that we can. But my memory is not lacking when I remember what I learned at RMC. And it was not just the institution, it was you. When I came to RMC, I was a complete idiot. I was so green. And how come I'm not surprised when Randy says that? So, after 4 years with you guys, I learned so much. And I'm pretty sure all of you did too. And you used it for the betterment of your life and your career. I, on the other end, left still a complete idiot. But as life goes on, I realized the caliber of individuals I was surrounded by, and I realized how much I benefited from that, and how it makes us all so much better and such greater contributors to our life and to the economy and to the world and to each other and to our families. We truly are blessed. So the gratitude expressed to me for the cruise was not nearly as great as my gratitude to all of you. Thank you.
Well, thank you. You're the new Sergeant Major. You look very young.
Oh, thank you, but I'm not. I'm just one of the many ex-cadets here.
Oh, okay. That sounds all right to me so far.
Do you think that since you're here,
Yes.
it'd be possible for us to have a little chat?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love to chat with cadets. Let's just push back and have a chat.
So, Mr. Cox, we all grew to love you as our CSM. Can you tell us what are some of the things that you hold dearest in terms of...
Every single one of you needed to be checked up as soon as you walked in.
Okay.
And I made that my first order of business after you got haircuts. And then once you got your haircut and your uniforms, I started to get proud of you. But you really made my day when you showed me you could pinch that penny between your cheeks and make it a goodie. Make it shine. You okay, Kiki?
So, a lot of us were in awe.
Whenever I got the chance. But I had some favorite moves, you know. Can I show you?
Certainly.
Right, stand by. Eyes right! Eyes front! Standards! Out and top! Present arms! Shoulder arms! Stand easy!
I see that you still have it.
Yes, what it is.
I was wondering if perhaps we could indulge in...
The food will be quieter, but there's going to be a lot more joie.
Okay, watching cadets' first college haircut.
I have ears.
I have yours.
I have ears.
Frigate sleepovers.
For McDonald.
Copper Sunday.
I know it's raining. Pinch that penny between your cheeks and keep marching.
Drill class.
Drill class. It's like watching paint dry, isn't it?
Skylarks.
Oh, Mr. Lazowski, Mr. Doherty, Mr. Crowley, Mr. Robertson, sprinting. Nude!
How about real skylarks?
Oh, it's when Mr. Doherty painted RMC on the top of the arch.
College food.
Well, obviously needed more saltpeter.
College social.
To the stone frigate, they'd be up to 140 beats per minute, and you guys look like a bloody accordion.
Are there any special memories?
Mercury. He said his name was Jimmy Wright. And he had the audacity to compare his mustache to mine. Yeah. Well, what's next? Well, then there was Black Bart and White Bart. They did very good on the parade square. I could never tell them apart. And then, of course, came Mr. Olejowski, if I can remember Mr. Olejowski. He was very smooth.
We didn't have much time.
For the last time on this parade square, a pad of concrete, which we who have been cadets respect and know only too well.
I wanted to put in a plug for Rose, but I didn't know you were going to do that. And I also wanted to put a plug in for CMR because we're a small group. So I was just going to say afterwards, maybe if there's a few of you still hanging around, we'll get a couple informal pictures of the two different colleges. But of course, we're all part of RMC too. So anyway, thanks. Oh, and I meant to, for the benefit of my classmates and the rodents. There's a few of you that kept your yeah, and so for FTW for Hudson Flight, I was going to say get together later, but thank you very much, Jim, and all the guys for putting this on, and for incorporating Rhodes and CMR as part of it, because we're out there too. So I won't say anything else, but anyway, rodents all the way.
Thanks very much, Will.